You're watching One Take by Eli DZ. I'll be going over the latest chapters of One Piece and giving my take. I'm going to go over various topics, so I'll provide a table of contents. That way you know what's in store, and if something catches your eye, you can skip ahead. In fact, I'm going to be highlighting the topic mentioned in the title and thumbnail. As someone who watches a lot of YouTube, I know what it's like to click on a video for its catchy thumbnail or title, and only to realize it's only mentioned for a portion of the video. So I just want to make things convenient for you. But I do hope you watch the entire video and enjoy. There will be a link in the description and the comment section to the latest chapter. Please support the official release. The 3 most recent chapters are free, and for only $2 a month you can get every single chapter of One Piece and many other shonen manga. This isn't a sponsor, I just really want to support the creators that give us such wonderful stories. So I'm deciding to go in a weird order, starting with 999, and then I'm going to be giving an analysis of 996, 997, and 998, which in my opinion is going to turn out way better than this review, because I just read the chapter today and I didn't have that much to think about. So let's get right into the review. Not only did I not have time to think about it, but I didn't really find this chapter particularly interesting. If I had to rank it, I'd give it a 3 out of 5. It has the ingredients to be a great chapter, right? It is a flashback, so we're going to get some lore. It's about an interesting character that is very popular, Ace. Actually, if I'm being honest, I don't really like Ace that much. He's actually one of my least favorite characters, but that's not a very popular opinion, so that'll just be a secret between us. And it's what I would consider a obligatory plot. It's stuff that has to be talked about in the story, but it doesn't have a special factor. It's just stuff Oda has to go over for things to move forward. So he had to show us Ace's flashback. But I think that even Oda wasn't that interested in showing Ace's flashback, because it was literally half a chapter. He didn't even give it an entire chapter. It was only half a chapter. That to me means he wasn't even that interested in telling it. Like, it's one thing to be pressed for time, right? He doesn't have as much time to release, One Piece chapters. It's been going on for a long time, but I mean, he could have gave it at least one chapter, but he didn't. He gave it half the chapter. It wasn't that interesting. We see that Otama and what's his name, Momonosuke, find out that he's the brother of Luffy. Again, that's obligatory plot. Like, that's just stuff they kind of have to know so it can go somewhere, but not very interesting. We see that Robin and Brooke are going upstairs. Again, that's just something we kind of have to know so that when they end up upstairs, we know how they got there. But yeah, this chapter was just so boring, but it did have an interesting ending, which was we find out that Kaido is a fish. I mean, he's not a fish, but his devil fruit is the fish. That is clearly a plot twist that Oda has had in the chamber for a while now, and I think he specifically put it in this chapter because it was boring. I think it was boring, and I think he's kind of self-aware that it wasn't that interesting of a chapter. So he needed something to give it a wow, we didn't see that coming. I think some people might have predicted it. Okay, so I just realized something. I wasn't recording with my camera this whole time, but this show is called One Take, so I'm not gonna re-record this. And who cares? My face isn't that interesting anyway. So I'll just put up some One Piece gameplay or whatever. So I love speculating. And even though this is a review, I still can't hold back from theorizing, or maybe not theorizing, but just a little bit of speculating. I love doing that. And I like watching reviews from people who do that as well. Like my favorite person to watch reviews from would probably be like a tie between Sawyer and Joy Boy, because they do a lot of interesting speculating and theorizing that it's just very entertaining, and I hope that I could capture that as well, deliver that to whoever is watching this, and whoever is watching this, I dearly appreciate you. So here's some speculation to end this with, because there's not much more I want to talk about this chapter. It was boring. Just straight up, it was boring. Kaido being a fish was something that I believe was foreshadowed in many different ways. Something I saw online was his tattoos. We were all under the assumption, most of us, that it was dragon scales, but it turns out to be koi. So what will his devil fruit be named? Will it be fish model dragon or fish model koi? I feel like fish model koi actually makes more sense than dragon, because I'm gonna assume that his devil fruit didn't even start out as a dragon. It quite possibly he started out as a fish, and along the lines, maybe even his awakening turned him into a dragon. And the reason I would say he started out as a fish is because of Chinese folklore, which is that a koi fish goes up a waterfall and turns into a dragon. You'll find this across the internet. A lot of people are talking about it, making the obvious reference of Magikarp, which is follows the same folklore. Magikarp turns into Gyarados and dragon. So it makes me wonder, Odin returned to Wano for the final time, and he found out that, well, it was really becoming ruined because of Orochi and Kaido. Well, they had this plan that made him look like a fool, and Kaido did not want to fight Odin right away. So the question is, well, why? Well, one of the reasons was, Kaido didn't have a big enough army. But it could possibly also be that his devil fruit wasn't evolved at the time. Who knows? But that's one speculation. Another thing I like to speculate is powers. So what can Kaido do now that we know he has some fish in his DNA, I guess? Is it possible that he can do some fishman karate? Maybe. I mean, if you look at the Ryugu Palace, it has a dragon on it, which makes perfect sense in hindsight. It also makes me wonder, what other sea dragons have we maybe seen in the series? Would sea kings count as dragons? Nah, I doubt it. But maybe there's like a sea king dragon. So like sea kings are kind of the template, and maybe one day we'll see like the strongest sea king ever, which would be like some cool dragon. Last thing I want to speculate is, will we ever see a mythical dragon fruit? Quite possibly. Some people have speculated that Yamato could be a dragon, and maybe Yamato has the mythical dragon fruit that makes her look more like a Western dragon, or the dragon that was on Punk Hazard. Another speculation is that Dragon, Monkey D. Dragon, has the dragon devil fruit, so maybe he has the mythical dragon fruit. That would be awesome. If he did, I would assume he got it from the world government, because that's just too much of a coincidence for him to be dragon and he has the mythical dragon fruit. He would have had to got it from a specific source. But look at my speculation. This turned from talking about Kaido to dragon. But yeah, there's not much more I want to talk about this. I believe that even though it's less relevant, I would implore you to check out my reviews of 996, 997, 998. They will have a lot more thought put into it, and I also enjoyed those chapters more than this one, so that'll definitely factor in. You'll see that I have much more passion talking about those chapters, so please check those out. They're really interesting. Look at the table of contents in the comment section, see if there's a topic that interests you. I do wonder if anybody would be interested in someone talking about past chapters, but I just like to be able to ramble like that. It's sort of almost like in a podcast way, but let me not ramble too much and just play the video. So again, this next section is going to be starting with 996. Oh, and one last thing. I did record that section before this. I had not read 999 when I recorded what you're about to watch. So just keep that in mind and enjoy. Alright, this is my first time doing this, and I hope it goes well. So, I'm going to be doing 3 chapters, 996, 997, and 998. 3 just sound like a good number to me, and 995 really wasn't that interesting, in my opinion. Of these 3 chapters, I would say 997 is my favorite, but they all have their gems. So starting with 996, we have Usopp, Nami, and Tama. Not particularly interesting to me. Definitely important plot. If I don't find something interesting, I'm not trying to downplay the plot, just to give a preface for like the rest of this video and series. It's like, it may not be interesting, but I also respect its necessity. Like, this is clearly a necessary plot point. But, yeah, I don't find it that interesting. Yamato is fighting Sasaki's crew, and she's actually taking a lot of damage. And it makes me wonder if she's almost doing that on purpose. Like, maybe she kind of enjoys being hurt. No, not like that. Maybe she enjoys the thrill of being a hero, right, and protecting them. Because it seems at some point she starts growing fangs, like she has a transformation. And it's like, well, then that means she was holding back. And throughout this fight, there's a lot of holding back in this war, actually. And for good reason. Like, Luffy can't go all out because he has to get to Kaido. But Yamato is a little different. She didn't come into this like, oh, this is my war and I have to do this and that. She just has an objective, that's protect Momonosuke. So it's like, why is she holding back? Like, just do whatever you gotta do. She's clearly very strong. But you could also argue it's just for plot, right? It's so that it can be suspenseful and we can see her transformation later on. But I just find Yamato's character to be quite interesting in ways that I think differs from a lot of people. I think a lot of people like, this is a cool character I would like to see a part of the crew. I don't necessarily want to see Yamato a part of the crew. I think she could shine. And I do say she, because I don't see her as the same as someone like Okiku, where Okiku is straight up transgender. She says she has the heart of a woman, right? She just identifies that from the inside. It's different for Yamato though. She just says, oh, I'm a man because I'm idolize this other man and I want to embody that man. And it's like different. It's not the same thing. She's just saying, I'm a man because I just want to be Odin. But yeah, Frankie comes, and the first thing that came to mind was that theory I seen on Twitter where it's like Sasaki is possibly the son of Kokoro, which seems to be pretty valid, especially with Frankie showing up. And then the number gets one shot, and it's like, man, I thought these guys would be pretty good at least, but they seem to be getting wrecked. I had a little theory on them, but it was just anywhere near enough about the numbers for this theory to make that much sense, so I never really put too much thought into it. But I was thinking maybe they could be like relatives of Kaido, like his brothers or something. And one of them was the father of Katakuri. And maybe that could be why Katakuri is so similar to Kaido, because the big theory is that Kaido is the father of Katakuri and his triplet brothers. But what if he's just related to, like, what if Kaido's just his uncle? And maybe that's why he idealizes him so much. You know, that could be just like a little wrench or like plot twist on top of a plot twist that Oda could do. But yeah, I don't think that at all now because of how awful their performances. They don't seem very important, but who knows? Maybe like the higher numbers are actually going to be more powerful and impressive, and the lower numbers are pretty, fodder on steroids. Yamato implies that Momonosuke is super important and he's going to lead the world to the dawn. So this is a little theory that I'm gonna try to just go into as fast as I can. What if there was a crew made up of the children of the last generation? So you had Yamato, Momonosuke, maybe Katakuri, maybe Marco, even though he's not really the son of Whitebeard, and Weeble could just that crew, right? And that crew could be allied with the Straw Hats. That way we can have a lot of major characters all in one crew that doesn't have to actually be a part of the Straw Hat crew, because I feel like we have to get someone really with such an it factor as a part of the final members of the main Straw Hat crew. And just in my opinion, Yamato is just not hitting that for me. I don't know why. I just don't see anything too spectacular about her. Okay, here's my favorite part of the chapter, and it has to do with a theory video that I released, and another theory video that's part 2 that I'm working on. In chapter 996, Robin and Law are seen talking to each other. He even tells her his family secret. Is the possible connection between Sword and the Revolutionary the reason for their closeness? I'm sure that sounded a lot more formal than the way I've been talking for the rest of this video, and that's because I read that off of a script. So I recorded part 2 of my Law as a part of Sword theory, and I finished recording before 996 even came out. So I never, I couldn't have added that if it never happened yet. So what I'm going to do is retroactively add in that part that I just read to you. So you'll be seeing that in the future. When I read this part, it lit me up inside, because I love it when I have a theory and then I just see new information that reinforces that theory, because it makes me go, okay, so I am onto something. It's not just random. Because in this part 2 that I already recorded, I do actually mention Robin. I say Robin's story is a lot like Law's, and because she isn't a revolutionary, it makes it very likely that Law could be too, for very similar reasons. And to then see this chapter come out and see them talking to each other, it's like, oh, ding ding ding. I start rubbing my hands together. But yeah. So what's interesting is that Law says, you are the only one I would tell this. Let me repeat. You are the only one I would tell this. To Robin. But why? Like, who is Robin to him? And it could be, because she's a Straw Hat. But still, he says, you're the only one I would tell this. And if you look, they seem to be in a very secluded area. It looks like they're on Zoro, maybe. And yeah, nobody's around. He's only telling her. So she is the only one. And it's like, well, what is special about their connection? I mean, is it just that he likes her enough, or he has a crush on her? No. Is it just because of her demeanor, and maybe that he is aware that she's been a part of the Revolutionary? Maybe he thinks that she's someone that wouldn't speak on the matter, but I don't think it's any abstract reason. Like, I think it's a very direct reason, and I think it has to do with the possible connection between Sword and the Revolutionaries. But yeah. And then he says, I've made up my mind. I think that's very key, because in part 1 of my Law's part of Sword theory, I kind of allude to Law maybe not being sure of himself. I say that maybe Drake rescued Law on hopes that Law would come to his side. Law would join Sword, or Law would help Sword out. Maybe Drake in that moment didn't even know that Law would. And it seemed like Law wasn't really on board or on side with Drake. So it was like up in the air. So when he says, I made up my mind, it seems like, yeah, he's finally ready to commit to whatever secret mission he could possibly be on. So Kid, he's like carrying a bunch of metal, and I always find it weird that he like really emphasizes his control over metal with his arms. Because it's like, if it was Magneto, he wouldn't be dragging a bunch of metal behind him on his arm. It would just be levitating behind him. So his powers definitely work in an interesting way, and I want to learn more about, or for Oda to tell us more about how his powers work. What I find interesting is in the fan-translated chapter, it says that something like electricity was running through Sanji's body. And I find this particularly interesting, because I have a theory that Conquerors Haki has the element of sound and electricity. When you really think about what singers do, it should help you understand why it is that Conquerors is the rawest form of Haki and why Haki itself is the element of the throat. Consider what this theory from the beginning has been about. We've been learning how the adjustment of one's frequencies will result in various performances. Well, guess what? Singers do that very thing. Just like how there is a spectrum for colors, chi, and chakra, the same applies to the human voice. We have a low pitch and a high pitch. Singers use keys that range from A to G. Thunder and lightning is a godly power that comes from the heavens. I could see it being attributed to either throat or crown. Throat because it involves ether, the sky which lightning comes from. Also, given that the element of sound goes along with thunder as well, throat chakra has a good reason behind why Conquerors Haki users create lightning. So, Black Maria is a musician. And I also have another theory about how Apu's powers may involve Conquerors Haki. And I just feel like it's possible that these battle musicians, Brook, Apu, Black Maria, has some way of using music to affect people on a spiritual and psychological level. And can almost influence and send out transmissions and hypnotize and all that type of thing. And sending out those waves could also be in the form of electricity. But yeah, that was only in the fan translation. The Viz translation does not mention electricity at all. Okay, so I just went over the entire chapter of 997, and then I realized it wasn't recording. This is my first one, so mistakes happen. But certain things that aren't very interesting to me, I'm just gonna completely skip over and not even acknowledge, so please bear with me. But yeah, for example, Sanji gets trapped. Again, very plot relevant, but I don't find it all that interesting. What I do find interesting is that Luffy and Jinbei encounter a ladder and are like, wow, this is so helpful. And I feel this has to be a gag. And I do think it's partly a gag because there's those headliners oh, we're waiting for you, Luffy, and then they don't ever see them. So I think it's very clear that it's a gag, but it's just so silly. I think Oda is almost self-aware and poking fun at himself. The fact that he's pretty much nerfing Luffy and Jinbei for the sake of plot. Look at the room they're in. The ceiling is only 10 feet above their head? You mean to tell me that these guys can't just bust a wall in the ceiling and jump? We seen all the way back in pre-time skip, Arlong Park. Luffy kicked through multiple ceilings all the way to the top. So you're telling me Luffy can't just punch a hole and then jump up? Not to mention, he literally can stretch. He has stretching powers. What does he need a ladder for? It's so stupid. Yeah, and I get it. It's oh, Luffy needs to conserve power so he can fight Kaido, but it's come on. He doesn't need Haki to just punch a hole in the wall. He could do that pre-time skip before he even learned how to do that stuff. But yeah, it's silly. Zoro is in a place where you look at the ceiling and how high up it is, you're okay, yeah, I can see why he's having trouble. But this is where the topic gets heated. The community loves and hates themselves some power scaling. Here we have some Supernova and Yonko Commanders, so things are gonna get heated when something happens. But a little unnecessarily so, if I may say, but I'll explain it later. Apu, very impressively, and I really want to see more from Apu, what he's capable of. He's able to hold his own against Drake and Zoro at the same time, which is insane, because it's he's clearly a specialty fighter, a long range. So the fact that he can hold up against two close range fighters, that's crazy. But it's also to be expected, because if it was Usopp holding his own against these close range fighters like that, it would be okay, that's kind of ridiculous. Clearly he's a sniper. He doesn't specialize in close range. But Apu is a captain. Being the captain of an entire crew, he should be all around. Like Luffy, he's very much a fighter and a brawler, but he does have long range because of his devil fruit powers. So it's like, even though he specializes in close quarters, he does have some all around. He has special defenses, and he has just special abilities that help him out in other categories. And we should expect the same from Apu. You know, Apu just isn't just some other person. Like, even though he's in a Yonko crew and he's a lower ranking member, he's still a captain of his own crew. So who is actually disappointing is Drake, because despite everything I just said about how Apu should be able to hold his own, Drake, on the other hand, is not only a close range fighter, but he's a zone. And not only is he a zone, he's an ancient zone. So he should be especially good in close range. He shouldn't be average, he shouldn't be decent, he shouldn't be good, he shouldn't be great, he should be superb. He should be the best of the best in close range. Yet somehow he can't knock Apu off his feet, which is ridiculous. And all that thing I just said about how like Apu and Luffy are very all around, they can hold their own close range and long range, that doesn't apply to Drake. He doesn't have some specialty long range attack. He's very much a close range fighter, in which is to be expected of his type, an ancient zone. But then with that means he really he should just be able to wreck Apu close range. Like, because you gotta imagine, let's say it's a 1v1 and Apu is 1,000 meters away from Drake, and Apu can do all these long range attacks on Drake, and Drake's objective is to close the distance, get near him. And it's like, imagine that 1v1 scenario where Drake is go through all those obstacles, he gets enough close to Apu, and he still is struggling to fight Apu close range. It's like, come on, be good at what you're supposed to be good at. Zoro too, to an extent, because we do see in this chapter he kind of wrecks Apu. However, despite the fact that Zoro is my favorite Straw Hat, I'm not going to sit here and gas him up and make him seem like, oh my god, Zoro's above Yonko Commander. He can defeat Kaido now because of how he just completely demolished Apu. It's really not like that. Because the thing is, supernovas do that to each other, right? We already see Zoro fight Killer, and they were both nerfed, but I would say Killer was even more nerfed. And even though Zoro won, he himself got knocked unconscious. So in a way, it was kind of a tie, right? And that was against a nerfed Killer. Then he is able to knock out Apu, which is very impressive, but Apu is distracted. He was fighting another supernova, another very powerful fighter. So it's kind of like, well, yeah, that's impressive, but it would have been a lot more impressive if it was 1v1. Not only that, we know in the next chapter Apu gets back up, so it wasn't even like he knocked him out for a long time. You know, Kid was able to get a very clean hit on Apu, and Apu wasn't even distracted. And Apu himself was able to knock out Zoro's captain, Luffy, for a considerate amount of time. So does that make Apu somehow better than Luffy? Like, oh, Apu wrecked Luffy and then Zoro wrecked Apu, so that Zoro must be way better than Apu and Luffy. Like, no, that's ridiculous. Clearly, it's the product of the story. This isn't Dragon Ball Z or a martial arts shonen story. This is about pirates, and what do pirates have? They have crews. So there's a lot of teaming up, ambushing, team attacks, sneak attacks, stuff of that nature, and that just happens throughout the story very regularly. You know, One Piece does not make it easy for power scalers, yet power scalers still take it upon themselves to be like, this happened, thus Zoro's this strong. And it's like, no, there's so much nuance to it. That being said, it was so awesome and my favorite part of the chapter. I love seeing Zoro do stuff like that. Alright, I'm just gonna skip over the part where like the virus stuff, and I can't spend time on that. What I do find interesting is that Okiku's arm fell, and that's something we already seen happen. It makes me wonder how us as an audience would have perceived it differently if we didn't see the arm fall in the previous chapter. Imagine if we just suddenly seen in chapter 997 that Okiku lost her arm, it fell, I think that would have been way more hype for us to just find out the progress of the battle there, and it would also leave a lot more to the imagination. See, the thing is, with Okiku losing her arm and us seeing it on screen, what that tells me as a reader is that's kind of the worst of it. That's showing, well, things are at stakes, but we don't really need to see much more to see that, you know, they're losing and things are going to be very bad for them. However, if we didn't know that and we saw Okiku's arm fell, it could make us think, oh, things are not going as we thought it was, and I wonder how bad things could be. Like, Okiku's arm fell off. Is she even alive? Is anybody else dead? Did anybody else lose any limbs? Stuff like that. But the fact that we already seen it happen on panel, I just think it's kind of fine. Clearly it's not fine because they lost, but I don't think anybody's dead yet. So here's a possible hidden genius of Oda. Zoro is suspected by Brook to have been using Conquerors Haki. Now, I believe Zoro does have Conquerors Haki and can use it, whether it be consciously or subconsciously. And a particular move that I believe he uses Conquerors Haki in is called Dragon Quake. So why that's super relevant now is that there's currently an earthquake happening. And who's causing this earthquake? A dragon. It's specifically dragon powers that are causing this earthquake. So it's like, did Oda intend to draw that parallel? I mean, even if he didn't, it's still genius regardless. Unfortunately, because the island's now in the sky, we're leaving behind the submarine full of lost crew. I wanted to see more of them, but looks like Oda's saving that for the future. Here's I think, in terms of theory crafting, the most relevant part of the chapter, which is the end, in which Yamato informs us the way Kaido is letting the island levitate, and that's with what she calls flame clouds, or at least that's what the Vid translation says. And why I find these flame clouds to be so interesting is because, first, let's look at Big Mom. Big Mom can also fly. She's not a dragon, but she can fly. And how does she fly? Well, using a cloud. Well, not only a cloud, she can also use Prometheus, a flame. In fact, in recent chapters, she's using both Prometheus and Zeus to fly. A flame cloud. I don't think that's a coincidence. Big Mom uses soul powers, and in my Understanding Haki series, I explain that I believe Big Mom's powers are directly related to Haki. Her powers are almost like a special version of Haki. And you could almost look at her powers being directly parallel to the way Haki should be used. Like, for example, I mentioned earlier, lightning is what I believe to be an element of Conquerors Haki. I also mentioned in Understanding Haki Part 2 that fire is also an element of Haki, and she just so happens to use both fire and lightning. So, once you figure that, then it opens up so many other possibilities, where it's like, what if this concept of flame clouds isn't exclusive to dragons? Now hear me correctly. I'm not saying that, oh, it's not a part of dragons' abilities or like there's some kind of trick. No, it's definitely a dragon ability. But what if other type of beings can also learn the ability to use flame clouds? I know that sounds kind of far-fetched, but let's think about another ability that could seem exclusive to a species but isn't. Fishman karate is literally called fishman karate. You would think it's only meant for fishmen, but that's not true. Koala of the Revolutionaries can also use fishman karate, but she's a human. So clearly, even though it's an ability meant for fishmen, and they probably developed it because of whatever inherent special powers that they have, however, it can still be taught. So then let's apply this to a specific character, Luffy. What if Luffy can learn how to use the flame cloud technique? I know that may seem random, but in my Understanding Haki Part 2, I say that I believe Luffy will earn and learn a technique that involves fire around his body. Now this brings me to what Luffy's going to be like in the future if he learns to master this fire, the 3rd level of Armament Haki. So you know how Luffy enters Gear 4th and there's a stream of smoke or mist around him and it looks like a scarf. Now imagine that stream of mist, but it's on fire. Wouldn't that be cool? Basically being a fire aura around him. I think that would be awesome, and I would love to take the credit for coming up with this idea. But this was suggested to me by this creator named Ichiro Oda, the literal author of One Piece. He actually showed this in one of his cover pages. I believe it's for chapter 821. So yeah, possible foreshadow? If it ends up happening, you come back to me, telling me I called it. Now, what does Luffy already have around his body? He produces this steam around his body that very much looks like clouds. So he already has the cloud part down. So really what he needs is to have that cloud turn into fire. Now, in Understanding Haki, I explained that there's this thing called chi, and chi is breath. So the fact that Gear 2nd is produced by, air pumped and then it produces steam, you can see the connection where it's also directly related to chi, which is related to Haki. So somehow that chi that produces the steam can be enhanced by fire, a fire like Haki. Maybe Luffy can produce flame clouds. Luffy might even get some kind of dragon form. I could see this happening 2 ways. He either develops the dragon form in order to fight Kaido, or he develops the dragon form because of his fight with Kaido, like afterward. So in order to fight Kaido, he could learn this dragon form on his own, or maybe he could even learn from a dragon. He could learn from Momonosuke. And there's theories that maybe even Yamato's a dragon, so maybe he could learn from her. Or maybe he can just learn from watching. I mean, he's really good at that too. I mean, that's how he developed Gear 2nd. And, well, maybe not Gear 2nd itself, but the techniques for Gear 2nd, he learned just from watching. He watched the CP members and he learned it. And it kind of makes me think of another series that is often clowned on for being so similar to One Piece, which is Fairy Tail. In that series, they have what are known as Dragon Slayers. And the reason they're called Dragon Slayers is because, well, it's self-explanatory. They slay dragons. And the way they slay dragons is they learn from the dragons. They learned how to be like dragons. They themselves develop dragon powers. So it could almost be like a reference, but not a reference. I don't think Oda would want to reference Fairy Tail, but still, it would just be a similar. It could be considered a coincidence or whatever. But that covers it for 977, the very interesting things that could possibly happen. So 988 starts, and the first thing I want to note is that whatever Brook was doing with the fire to Chopper, it clearly didn't work because Chopper's still like, I mean, it probably worked to an extent. Maybe it stopped the spread, but it didn't help cure him, or it didn't help, turn him back to normal. But that's where Marco comes in, and he uses his fire to help out Chopper. I love how Marco is so unfazed by Brook and Zoro attacking him. He doesn't even acknowledge or address them. I just think that's interesting, and just shows how cool of a character Marco is. He's just so focused, which as a doctor, that makes sense. If he's ever doing an operation or whatever, he can't be distracted. He just has to have his eye on the task. Chopper says something interesting. He says, "Strange, I'm burning, but I don't have burns. The fire is at just the right temperature to hold back the virus." So, Marco's flames are so weird because Chopper says that they have a temperature, yet they aren't burning him. So clearly his fires work selectively. I'll definitely be going more into this when I talk about Understanding Haki Part 4, because I'll be going over various devil fruits and all the implications of how it can be related to Haki and stuff. I just really like the way Marco's fire works, and it said that, I gotta find the source and show you the picture, but it said somewhere that Marco's fire just doesn't burn people. So you could perceive, Chopper's comment of like, oh, it burns at the right temperature. It could seem like, oh, because he's already has ice, he's not being hurt by the fire because he's being cold at the same time. But I don't think that's how it works. It's just the fact that Marco's fire doesn't burn. Like, let's say he used it on Zoro, like it just wouldn't hurt him. And we've seen him use it on a lion before, like to heal the lion. Again, it has nothing to do with the ice. It's just the fact that his fire just doesn't hurt. But it can hurt Prometheus, which sort of goes along the lines of it being connected to Haki and soul power and all that other stuff. But anyway, Apu gets up and then immediately chomped on by Drake, so that was disappointing. Apu, you'll get your time to shine. Zoro makes a comment, well, at least you've got a talent for picking the winning horse. Now, that's a bit of a burn, but it's not exactly fair or warranted. I can see how Zoro, from his perspective, he can see it like that. But the thing is, Drake didn't just go, oh, the Straw Hats are winning, I'm gonna join their side now. No, it's because they already figured out that he was a spy. Like, they already were trying to murder him. He didn't go to the Straw Hats because he thought they were winning. In fact, I'm sure he probably doesn't have too much faith in them winning, but he did it because he didn't want to get killed by the other side. That's it. However, I've seen some people look at this comment and think, oh, is that foreshadowing? Oh, is Drake gonna turn back to Kaido's side if they're winning? Or like, no, he can't go back to them. Like, they already know his secret. There's no going back to Kaido's side. And people say, okay, well, maybe he's gonna betray them for the Marines. But the thing is, that's not really switching sides. Like, the reality of it, he's already undercover, even though he's with the Straw Hats. Like, he didn't tell them that he's a Marine. He's already not on their side to begin with. So it's not like Drake is just gonna become evil out of nowhere and just like, no, he's just doing what he has to do. And the thing is, even though he might be working with Marines, he's working with Kobe. Like, he's really close to Kobe of all Marines. So that should give you indication that Drake is probably genuinely a good guy. It's like I said in my Law theory, like, Law might betray the Straw Hats, but at the end of the day, he's still gonna be on the good side. Luffy makes a comment about how he couldn't sense whatever Sanji sensed, so he needs to work on his observation haki. And I feel like there's some truth in that, but it's also part of a joke. The joke being, Sanji didn't just sense anything, he sensed a woman. So it was almost kind of like his perverted senses kicking in. That's like the joke of it, but there's some truth to it as well. Now, Luffy has future sight, an advanced form of observation haki, something that Sanji has not shown, right? So to say that Sanji has superior observation haki to Luffy is not accurate, just as a blanket statement. However, in Understanding Haki, Part 3, I explained that there was, two forms, two stages. I mean, that's an oversimplification, but think of it as just two different stages of observation haki. And I said heart chakra and then third eye chakra. See, it seems like Luffy is great with the third eye chakra and is still good with the heart chakra as well. However, even though Sanji hasn't really shown any future sight or third eye chakra type of observation haki, he is exceptionally well, really, really well with the heart chakra. So because of that, he is superior to Luffy in that specific aspect. So for Luffy to say, I need to work on it, that's a valid statement. He could work more on his basic observation, if you could call it that, right? Just the first form of observation haki. If he wanted to get on Sanji's level in that regard, yes, he would have to work on himself. So I think that's a tricky statement. I think a lot of people took it at face value and maybe even dismissed it because they go, oh, well, Sanji doesn't have a future sight, so that's kind of ridiculous of Luffy to say. But it's not. There's some truth to it. But also, it's a joke, so don't take it too serious at the same time. What I find interesting is Black Maria's zone devil fruit. Ancient zone. Right, we get a confirmation it is an ancient zone. It's not a mythical or a smile. Yet for some reason, it looks like there's a face on her legs. It's almost like her legs is the spider and her upper body isn't. But it's like, isn't that how the smile users work? And like, maybe if it was a mythical zone, this could make sense. Like, because mythical zones have special properties. And also we've seen Marco, he could like partially transform a lot, which is something we don't see a lot from regular zone users. But no, it's an ancient zone. It just, for some reason, is very different. But I'm looking forward to Oda giving an explanation. I'll be disappointed if he doesn't give some kind of explanation, but I have faith he'll say, oh, she's special because of this. You know, maybe she got experimented on. And it's like she did have a genuine ancient zone, but maybe some way, somehow, it got like a smile modification to it. Or maybe this is the awakening. That could be it too. We haven't really seen an awakened zone user besides the ones in Impel Down. And the thing about the ones in Impel Down is it was like they were like they didn't have any autonomy. It almost seemed like they were controlled by the devil fruit itself, like as if the devil fruit had its own life or something. So maybe that's was like a improper version of the awakening, and this is the proper version of what an awakened zone user looks like. It like literally awakened the life of the devil fruit inside of it. And that makes me think of, you know, devil fruit objects. Maybe the reason like Spandam's sword, I forgot the name, sorry, something freed. Maybe that sword is an elephant and is almost like alive because the elephant fruit within it is already awakened, and that's how awakened zone users work. It just awakens the animal spirit inside the fruit and gives it life. We see Who's Who. Who's Who is interesting to me because he wears a mask and he has that eye tattoo, so it makes me think he might be of the Three-Eye Tribe. And what made me think he could be of the Three-Eye Tribe isn't even so much the fact that he's wearing a mask. It was actually that squirrel girl who doesn't seem to be a part of his crew. As far as we know, that squirrel girl seems to be, or it could be a boy, I don't know, seems to be like just a part of Kaido's like close inner circle. Like Kaido just asks for the squirrel to do whatever, and that squirrel also works with King a lot. So it makes me wonder, like, if Who's Who tattoo isn't even so much his crew, because I don't really see a lot of his crew with that tattoo symbol on them. He seems to just be the one that has a symbol. Like maybe it's because it's specific to Three-Eye Tribe, and that squirrel seems to be really good at observation haki. And what did I say in Understanding Haki Part 3? The third eye chakra is linked to the Three-Eye Tribe, and the third eye chakra is really powerful observation haki. So kind of like fits in, you know? Then we see page 1 and Ulti. Kind of a waste of a page, but I get why Oda drew them, because he wanted to draw all the Tobi Roppo in one page. But all we see from them is, oh, where did they go? We're chasing Nami and Usopp. Like we don't already know that. And if you look, there's a little picture, we could see that baboon got wrecked, which is to be expected, but it's still alive. It said ook. So, well, good for him. And then it ends with Ace, which I'm excited, but not too excited. I'm not the biggest fan of Ace. He's very disappointing to me. According to Who's Who, now that Jinbei cleared a way for Luffy, he is for sure going to meet Kaido. So what's gonna happen in the next few chapters? Basically, how long is this Ace flashback gonna last? Again, I'm not that big a fan of Ace, so if it only lasts one chapter, I wouldn't mind. I know a lot of people would be like, but I'd be like, yeah, just show us what we need to know about his flashback and his journey to Wano. And like maybe it lasts a chapter and a half, right? And chapter 1000 ends with Luffy and Kaido finally meeting. I'll take this quick moment before I end this to talk about 2 videos I considered making, and maybe you can let me know if I should still go through with it. First, I was talking about power scaling earlier, and I made a comment about how Zoro beat Apu and Apu beat Luffy, so does that mean Zoro's somehow stronger than Luffy? I feel like Zoro is not stronger than Luffy, but, and this is the controversial thing, he actually has a good chance of defeating Luffy in a 1v1. I know a lot of people would be like, no way, Luffy's the captain, he can't lose to Zoro. But the way I look at it is the matchup. Just the fact that Zoro has the tools to be able to defeat Luffy, even though Luffy is stronger. A great example of this is NL. NL in Skypiea was definitely stronger than Luffy, but Luffy had the tools to defeat him. So it is what it is. So that's one video I've always been thinking of making, as Luffy versus Zoro versus Sanji. What discourages me from making that is that, one, it's a very heated topic, so it's gonna get toxic one way or the other, like if I try to discuss it. And 2, it's not something with too much substance. I like to make theories and analysis because it could actually go somewhere and it could branch out and create much more topics and just share information with people. And some of the things I theorize, I use real life information, and that real life information is just could almost be seen as trivia. Like, oh, there's this thing, it's called Qi, it's a Chinese philosophy, it came from 500 years ago, it's all about Taoism and blah 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 blah. Like, interesting stuff that actually has some kind of substance. If I just go Zoro versus Sanji, that's fun, I like talking about it, but it doesn't actually provide too much outside of just that topic. Another video I was thinking of making is discussing Yonko Commanders and how disappointing they are, and I feel like they should be a bit stronger than they currently are. But again, there's not too much substance to that. Lately, the Yonko Commanders have been doing a bit more impressive stuff. Well, it's actually kind of a while ago. King was able to knock down Big Mom ship, which had the potential to kill Big Mom, so he potentially could have killed the Yonko. And then Brooke, what? No. And Queen was able to knock out a nerf to Big Mom, but still, he was able to knock her out, so that was pretty impressive. But Yonko Commanders overall have just been just not too impressive, just not impressive enough for me. So I've been thinking of making a video about that, and maybe ways things could be a little bit different. So you let me know. But thank you so much for listening to my very first one take. Thanks for watching. If you want to see more in the future, then subscribe. Want to be my first every video? Then hit that bell icon. Maybe subscribing is too much of a commitment, but you still want to see me around? Well, then it's a good thing you can like the video. It lets YouTube know you want to see videos like these suggested to you. Communication is key to a great relationship. So leave a comment or reach out to my email, Twitter, or wherever else you can find me. Check the time bar, there might be more left of this video. If not, then I hope to see you next time. Bye. Thank you for tuning in to my very first episode of One Take. So the premise around this show really comes down to the fact that I take really long to make my theory videos, because I like to put a lot of thought, consideration, and care into them. And I still want to release videos though. So I wanted to create a series where I feel like I could put together videos more quickly, not have to be scrutinizing them as much or really trying to make sure I do tons of research and get things right and all that. And I kind of had that with 1 minute theories, but I do like making those short little theories, but it's just, I don't know, it's usually never enough for me to really want to put out a video, even if it's easy, if I feel like it's just a weak theory. And usually to me, theories that are around a minute, 2 or even 3 minutes really aren't that strong of theories. Well, not when it comes to a story like One Piece that has almost 1,000 chapters worth of material to go over. And that's just the manga. That doesn't even count like data books and stuff like that. But yeah, there's so much to go into, and I love those huge theory videos I make, even though it takes super long and a lot of time and energy. However, with this video series, I'm able to kind of sprinkle in little theories here and there at just kind of not random, but you know, if I see something in the manga happen and it kind of correlates with a theory that I've been having in the back of the mind, I could just mention it along with the analysis of the manga. So I'm enjoying that. I'm having fun with that. I never really had the drive to just do reviews, even though I like reviews. I watch Sawyer, Joy Boy, Tekken, Rogers Base. I like watching reviews. For me personally, I just feel like because there's so many people already doing reviews, it's like, what left is there to cover? Especially when it's just reacting to the chapter a day or two after it came out. With me going over the last few chapters, it's stuff I have had a lot of time to think about. So that's the added benefit. The reason it's called One Take, for one, it's based off One Piece. So One Piece, One Take. It's also called One Take because my goal is to be able to record this in one take. I usually, with the theory videos, I'll record about like 3 or 5 separate instances. Yep, I'm not gonna edit that. I'm gonna try my best to do it one take. It'll be multiple instances. You know, I'll be writing, then I'll record. Maybe I'll do some more writing, then record some more, like that. But with this, I just wanna, in one day, record the whole thing in one instance. And also just not do too much editing, just to help make it come out quickly. However, I wasn't able, not that I wasn't able, well no, I couldn't have done it in one take now because I had some technical difficulties. Actually weren't really technical difficulties. It was just me being rusty. I haven't made a video in a while. So the first mistake I made was I have this USB microphone. However, when I was recording that intro, where you can actually see me on camera, I was using the microphone from my laptop. So then I had to re-record the whole thing. But it was only like a minute, so it wasn't too bad. Then I was recording the actual review portion, which was not on camera, just me on the microphone. But my computer went into rest mode. And what I didn't realize is it doesn't record when it's in sleep mode, which makes sense in hindsight, but I just didn't know that at the time. So I recorded I reviewed chapter 997 in its entirety and then realized I didn't get any of it. So I re-recorded that. And there was like 1 or 2 things that I kind of realized the next day after recording. So I just added it. It was only like 2 minutes worth of talking that I didn't get in the first take, but I'm a bit rusty and I'm definitely gonna get better at this, and the next time I do record this, it will be in one take. Yeah, thank you so much. As I said in the main portion of the video, I am working on part 2 of Law is a Part of Sword, which part 2 in itself could be called Law is a Part of the Revolutionary Army. If you haven't seen the first one, I highly recommend it. It's actually one of my most viewed videos, one of my best received videos. And I'm not the only person and not the first person to suggest that Law is a part of Sword. But I feel like with my video, I pretty much put all the evidence compiled together as to why it is Law could be a part of Sword, which for some people it's just like, oh, Law and Drake seem to be working together or something, so maybe Law's a part of Sword. But I'm like, no, there's a lot more to it. There's Law, Corazon, Sengoku, Kobe, all connected. And then I give reasons as to why Law would be a part of Sword. And I think what really sets me apart from everybody else is part 2, which I enjoy even more than part 1. Because part 1 was really just to set up part 2, which will show like Law may be way more crucial to the end game than we really realize. I think there's a lot of people that think that there's really not much left to Law's story, and there's a huge popular theory that everybody and their grandma says that Law is gonna give his life up in Wano and die, and well, if he dies, his story ends there. I think he does have actually more left to his story that will quite possibly go to near the end of the entire story. Like, I think he's gonna play a big role, and for good reason. I mean, besides whatever Oda has in store, he's super popular among the fandom. He's like easily top 5 most popular One Piece character of all time. Like, who could be more popular than Law? I don't think there's anybody besides Luffy and Zoro. I think Law might even be more popular than Sanji and Ace and Sabo. Like, there's really nobody else more popular than Law besides Luffy and Zoro. But yeah, please check that out. I'm gonna play a little clip at the end of this. Oh yeah, check out my secret ending of Law is a part of Sword if you haven't, because I say a lot of interesting stuff in there. In particular, the Jaguar D Saul may be a part of Sword. That in itself is its own theory. I should really like cut that and just make that its own video or something, because that's actually a legit solo theory that Jaguar D Saul may still be alive and a part of Sword. But yes, thank you so much for watching. The question is, how much is Law invested in Sword? I'm not very inclined to believe that Law is an undercover Marine. However, that would continue the trend of Corazons being double agents. Virgo was a Marine that was secretly a pirate, and Rosinante was a pirate that was secretly a Marine. However, it's hard to believe that Law would become a Marine given what the world government did to his family and hometown. I think if he could keep a safe distance as a pirate, he would be willing to join a sect of the Marines if they aligned with his goals and values. One thing to remember is that the Marines and the world government aren't exactly the same thing. Even Fleet Admiral Akainu poses the world government at times, which, if you remember, Sengoku ordered Akainu to be a rebel Marine during the Battle of Marineford. And as many have pointed out, he has a tattoo of a sword. Possible foreshadow? Anyway, let's talk about the most important person in Law's life. Rosinante is someone that Law looks up to above all else. He named his pirate crew after him and even wore clothes in tribute to Korra. Given that the person he looked up to most is someone that is a Marine, it shouldn't be too much of a stretch to think that Law would be willing to work with Marines that were as good of people as Korra. Even so, Rosinante didn't have blind faith in the Marines. He was willing to screw them over and steal the Opi Opi no Mi for Law's sake. So, if you question the likelihood of Law trusting Sword, just remember, Law is someone that knows despite how evil the world government can be, there are good Marines that are even willing to rebel against the world government. Law may truly be a pirate, but under the right circumstances is willing to work alongside Sword. You could think of him as Sword's personal Shichibukai. Now that concludes the theory, just talking about Law being a part of Sword. For the most part, it's a safe theory, nothing too crazy, cause I mean most people already think Law and Drake could be collaborating. And given that Kobe is a part of Sword, it's safe to say that Sword are the good guys. Even if Law were to betray the alliance with Luffy, he'd just be going from one group of heroes to another. And really, is it all that bad in the end? What if Law being a part of Sword means that he doesn't want the One Piece, and that he won't have to be rivals and enemies with Luffy in the future? Well, actually, the exact opposite might be true. Law's inclusion in Sword and his desire for the One Piece might be connected. Check out part 2 of this theory, in which I go over what I believe is the goal of Law and Sword In addition to that, why I believe the Revolutionary Army has